Working on the night moves. Dun, dun. Working on the night moves. Dun, dun, dun. What's up, everybody? How's it going? I'll try to repeat that intro that I did last time. Hello, everyone. Viewers and non-viewers. Subscribers and non-subscribers alike. Welcome. Welcome to the Big Jake channel. This is gonna be a super boring video if I don't get out of this slow speed downtown stuff. Say hello. Say hello to my little friend Betsy. This is Betsy. So, happy Thursday. If you're watching this on Thursday, I hope it's a good Thursday. Okay, all right. So here's what we're gonna do, because last week I had so much fun telling you guys a story. This week, I'm going to tell you another story, but I'm going to tell you guys, my audience, you wonderful, wonderful people, I'm going to tell you the real version, like the version that I didn't even tell my friends and family. So like, how close does that make us? If I'm telling you stuff that I haven't even told my friends and family. So, I'm going to tell you the story today, or tonight, or this morning, whenever you're watching this. You're probably like me. If you're watching YouTube, you're probably doing it at like 11 o'clock at night. You should have known, or you should have gone to bed at 10, but you didn't. So anyway, don't worry about that. Stay up late and watch this. You can always get a different job. So, the time that I almost bought a Hayabusa, that's the story I want to tell. So back in 2016, which was the last year, that I bought this thing, which is my 03 CBR 954RR. Got to include the RR because it stands for R. So I bought this last year. And it was kind of funny the way that it happened, because originally I was set out to buy a Hayabusa. And it's not because I need a Hayabusa, or really that anybody needs a Hayabusa, especially me. But I was going to buy one because I'm super tall. And so I wanted the Hayabusa because it's a sport bike, or super bike, whatever. It's a sport style bike, and it fits mongoloids like me. I'm kind of 6'7", and although I fit on this thing technically, I'm told that I look like an overgrown orangutan on it. So anyway, I was set out in 2016, like spring of 2016, I think it was like April, I was going to buy a Busa. And the problem with buying a Busa is they're mostly relatively expensive. So anyway, so I go to this big dealership locally, which shall remain nameless because I don't want to be that type of guy who's going to badmouth a place where people make their living. I get it. It wasn't necessarily the people that I was talking to. It wasn't their fault. But it was a big dealership located around the St. Louis area. And what happened was I drove up to this dealership one day just after work, just kind of on a whim. Like, I wasn't really about to pull the trigger on a bike, but I was close enough that I wanted to know what all the dealerships had. And so I go up to this dealership after work. It was like a Friday afternoon, and this is like in like late April, I want to say. And sitting out front where this dealership kept all their used bikes was a bright red, I like red if you can't tell, was a bright red 2004 Hayabusa. Now, it wasn't perfect. It had like 24,000 miles on it, which is considered reasonably high for a sport bike, and it had some scuffs, as you would expect any bike with 24,000 miles to have on it. So I'm just like, oh, this is cool. You know, this is a used Hayabusa, which is what I'm after. I like the color. It had an aftermarket exhaust. I want to say it had like an Akrapovic exhaust. And it was a Busa. It was cool, and it was all original. Like, it wasn't perfect, but you could tell all the body panels were original. It had a clean title, all that stuff. And they were asking, at this dealership, they were asking like $4,900, which even for a used Hayabusa is reasonably low. Like, that's pretty low, even for a Busa with 24,000 miles on it. So I'm talking to the salesman, and I told the salesman, who was very, very nice, and again, what happened was not his fault. He was very nice, and he goes, look, that's totally fine. If you're not here to buy the bike, you're just stopping by, which is exactly what I told him. He goes, that's totally cool. He goes, but if you like this bike, pick a number. Just pick a number. Name your price, and I'll just take it back to the sales manager. And if it's something he'll do, great. And if not, no harm done. And I was like, all right, that's a pace that I can work with. That's relaxed. And so what I did was I offered, they were asking $4,900 for this 04 Busa with, like I said, exhaust, 24,000 miles on it, and a clean title. They're asking $4,900. That's what they wanted for the bike, which is pretty cheap. And I told them, I was like, look, I'll give you $4,200, which is dirty cheap. And so, somebody out there is going to go, oh, well, my brother-in-law got a 2012 Busa for $1,000. Whatever. This, realistically speaking, $4,200 for an 04 Busa. That's cheap. That's real cheap. And so he went back to his sales manager, and they did the whole dance. You know how it is at dealerships. And he comes back like 2 minutes later. He's like, done, take it home. And I'm like, sweet. All right. So they're like, $4,200 to deal, take it home. And I'm like, all right. And here's the deal. Here's the part that I haven't really told friends or family. So at that point, this was April of 2016, I had the cash to buy the bike, which is always a good place to be in if you're going to buy something, is to have money for it. So I had the cash to buy the bike. But here's the thing. I only had enough cash that I could pretty much buy the bike, drain my savings a little bit, pay sales tax on it, and I'd still be fine, but it was like, financially I would be south of where I'm comfortable, if that makes sense. Everybody has a number that they're comfortable with, and this would have put me just below that. And so I didn't want to do it. So this is the part that I didn't really tell anybody else. I went home that day, I signed, but this is the important part. This is why this is a story, is because we shook hands, the salesman and I, we shook hands on the price, and I signed papers. I don't exactly know what the papers said, but they were like sales papers. They said, you agree to pay this price, and you agree to pick it up by this date, blah, 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 blah. And I put down a $300 cash deposit so that they knew I was for real. Okay, so we agreed on a price. I shook hands like you shake hands with a human, and then signed papers, and I agreed, I think it was the intent to purchase or something. I signed some papers. I probably should have paid attention to what they were. And we had an agreed upon price and pickup date and all this stuff. So anyway, so I go home that day and I'm still in shock. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just bought a Busa. I was like, Busa, bro. And so we decided to go ahead and take out a loan for this Hayabusa. So we go to our bank, and our bank, which is a big national chain, I think I can just say it, it's US Bank. So we go to US Bank, and they're super friendly, but they're like, we're not going to do that. And I don't know why, because my wife and I both have really good credit scores, and they would have given us a loan for anything else. It was just something about how they loan on motorcycles. They're like, nah, we ain't doing that. We ain't touching that 04 Busa. And so we're like, okay. So we go to a couple more banks, big national banks, which is probably our mistake in hindsight. And we're like, hey, this is the deal. This is what we want to buy. And these, I think it was one or two other banks outside of US Bank were like, thanks for coming. We don't do that. We won't loan on an 04 Busa for whatever reasons. And I forget whether it was the bike was too old or whatever. But I think it had more to do with the bike than it did anything we did. So, okay, so this is a week after. So I go and I made the deal on a Friday, signed the papers, gave the guy $300, shook his hand, which is important to me that I shook his hand. I go back a week later. This is after going to the banks and getting turned down, and I'm like, all right, I'm curious what the dealership can do for me financing wise, because dealerships tend to have a lot more power and flexibility when it comes to financing. And so I go and I meet with my salesman. He's like, hey, what's up, man? Good to see you. You're here for the Busa. And I'm thinking, I'm taking this thing home today. We're going to figure out some type of financing that works. I'll have, a small payment. It'll improve my credit, blah, 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 blah. And so we sit down, and I'm like, all right, let's figure this deal out. And he's like, what's the VIN number on your Busa? And I'd taken a picture of the VIN number, but I don't think I had my phone with me or something. And I'm just like, I don't have it on me. And he's like, no worries, man. Let me run real quick so we can do this financing. Let me run and get the VIN number off the bike, and then this will take 10 minutes, and we'll get your financing done, and you'll be good. And I was like, all right, sweet. And here I am, like, you know, helmet, gloves, you know, I've got Geico open. I'm like getting my insurance ready. I'm like, it's bike time. It's, you know, this has been 2 years in the making, or 3 years. It'd been 3 years since I had a bike at that point. And I'm getting everything ready, and I'm like, oh, it's about to be Busa time. Busa time. Here we go. And I'm all pumped, you know, and I can smell it. I can smell my Busa. Well, apparently I couldn't, because after 10 minutes, my salesman comes back and he's looking like super dejected, like super bummed and like embarrassed, like he's red in the face. And I'm like, what's up? And he goes, dude, he goes, I feel like such a jerk, but your bike's gone. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what, like somebody moved it? He's like, no, man. He's like, I talked to the owner of the dealership. He goes, I talked to the owner, and he said the other night, it was after hours, and somebody was still in the shop. Somebody was like still at the dealership after they'd closed. He goes, he walked into the back where the sold bikes are, which is where my bike was, because it was sold. He the owner of the place let this random guy walk back there, and I don't know who it was. I don't really care. He goes, the owner, just for whatever reason, let this guy walk back there. He saw your Busa and offered him a few hundred more than you did, and he took it, and your bike's gone. And I'm like, okay. So what do we do now? And he was like, all credit to my salesman, he was super apologetic. Like, what could he do at that point? So I drive an hour to this place, and it's gone. And my salesman didn't even know it. Or if he did, he sure faked it. And so he's like, look, man, he's like, I'm embarrassed. I'm sorry. This is not the experience that I wanted you to have. He goes, that's not how I do business. It was the owner's decision. And, you know, I'll give, and he gave me $100 gift card for my trouble, which was nice of him. At the end of the day, whoop-de-doo. But still, he's like, I'm really embarrassed and I'm sorry. I'm like, well, you know, there's nothing else that can be done. And I'm not like a vengeful person. I was just disappointed, and I'd never had that happen. Like, in my mind, between the deposit, you know, me shaking his hand and me signing whatever papers I signed, which to their credit, I don't know what I signed, the bike was mine. And that's why they put it with the sold bikes, because it was sold. So anyway, my salesman's super apologetic, and they gave me this $100 gift card, and my only choice is to go home. And, you know, they even told me, they're like, look, like, we'll take, you know, 20, 30, 40% off of a different bike if you want it. You know, we'll just cut you the deal of a lifetime, which was, again, was cool of them, but I'm still miffed that the owner of the place, because that speaks to the whole establishment, unfortunately. In my mind, like, that ruins the reputation of the whole place. It wasn't some skeezy salesman, it was the owner, the CEO. Which I guess segues into how I bought the CBR 954. I was still looking for a Busa. This was like a week later after they told me that they had sold my sold bike. And a friend of a friend texts me who sells bikes just like on the side. Like, he's not really a dealer. He just sells them. And he goes, hey, he goes, I got this 954. You should come take a look at it. And I'm like, nah, dude, like, I'm not looking for a 954. I'm looking for a Busa. And he's like, all right, that's fine. And then he sends me a picture of it. And it's all red and black, and it's got chrome wheels, and I'm like, all right, I'll come look at it because I have to. And then I showed up and bought the thing immediately. So that's how that went. That was the story of the time I tried to buy a Hayabusa. It probably won't be the last time I try to buy a Hayabusa, but it was the first time. Thanks again for coming and hanging out. This is the Big Jake channel, and I am a Big Jake, as you may or may not have guessed. If you'd like to follow me on social media, it is Big Fast Jake on Instagram. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. You know I appreciate it. So coming up this Sunday on your Sunday Sit Down, we are going to cover how to gain muscle mass and get swole, cuz we going to get real swole on the Sunday Sit Down. We're going to eat protein and take creatine and lift weights. But for real, tune in on Sunday for Sunday Sit Down, and then we will be back on Thursday for your regularly scheduled programming. I love y'all. Bye-bye.